After I died, my boyfriend could actually hear my inner thoughts. At first, he thought it was an illusion until I told him a secret that even he didn't know. Actually, I cut the hole in your pants pocket. It was so convenient and fun to tease him like this. And I could also see him blush. If you don't believe me, look at the white one in the wardrobe. There is also a hole in the right pocket. Sean didn't believe it, and went to feel it suspiciously. Damn, Stella. You're really sneaky. Before the flowers on my grave had withered, Sean couldn't bear the loneliness. In the private room, one group of hostesses was replaced by another. Sean was still not satisfied. Isn't there one like last time? He lazily lifted his eyelids and threw out the roster in his hand rather discontentedly. Like last time? It was me. Wasn't it? Sean and I were originally a one-night stand. That day, he ordered a hostess but mistakenly pulled me, who was drunk, into the room. After we sobered up, we stared at each other, both looking as if we had seen a ghost. Stella, Sean, then two ghost-like screams rang out together. He stepped back and fell off the bed. I wrapped the quilt tightly around me and retreated to the door. My inner thought was, don't come over. What kind of fate was it that made us meet in this way after graduating from high school? Anyway, I wanted to go crazy on the spot. Speaking of the relationship between Sean and me, it could be written into a big book of farcical stories with blood. Briefly summarized, the whole school was spreading that I liked him. But only I myself didn't know. Maybe it was because he was quite handsome? And rather arrogant? And also a bit crazy. So his gossip was the headline of the whole school. And I, because of my geographical disadvantage, became the one who always topped the list. Actually, in my eyes, we were just a pair of ordinary desk mates who hated and fought with each other every day, constantly competing for elbow space on the desk and pinching each other's thighs under the desk. But these little actions, in the eyes of some people with ulterior motives, might seem like I was taking advantage of him. Oh my God. It was clearly mutual harm. Why was I the only one who got hurt in the end? So when I handed the carefully worded love letter to my secret crush, he immediately handed it to Sean. And I was petrified on the spot. Looking at the man with broad shoulders, a narrow waist and long legs on the floor, I just felt that I had eaten a piece of shit last night. Just as I was about to pull up my pants and run away, he hugged me around the waist. Stella, I don't care. You have to be responsible. After hesitating for 2 seconds, he added with emphasis, I'm a clean virgin. All right. Who isn't? Then are we even? As soon as my hand touched the doorknob, Sean buried his head and bit my shoulder. Stella, if you dare to leave, I'll have an episode and show you. Sean had mild mania. When we were at school, I had seen him have episodes many times. Well, in these days, the normal ones can never beat the sick ones. Sean was sick, so I had to follow him. But I also had my own selfish motives. Anyway, Sean was really good looking. I didn't realize it before, but now the more I look at him, the more he looks like my type. And his body, just being hugged from behind, made my little heart flutter uncontrollably. Then, just for fun? Yes, just for fun. Sean and I got together like this. I was attracted by his beauty, and he was looking for something new. We each got what we wanted. The only pity was that I didn't even live long enough for him to get tired of me. I sighed silently, floated to the coffee table opposite Sean and sat down, crossing my legs to look at him. Heartless guy. Can he also have insomnia? I reached out to rub the dark circles under his eyes, but my fingers passed through and I almost fell. Sean seemed to sense something and raised his hand to rub his eyebrows. A pair of deep eyes stared blankly ahead. He looked as if he could see me. It was really spooky. Fortunately, he quickly looked away and landed on the newly entered hostess. His tired eyes suddenly lit up. She was his type. I knew this hostess. Her name was Vera. My half-sister. She was only 1 year younger than me. the product of my father's extramarital affair. After cutting off relations with my family, I had only seen her once. It was when my father begged me to donate blood to her after she had a car accident. Vera looked a bit like me, especially her eyes, which blinked like they could talk. Before, Sean always praised my eyes, saying that they could make him fall in love. I still laughed at him. Now it seems that he really wasn't lying. It was really those eyes that could make him fall in love. Sean stood still. Vera lowered her eyes and walked forward, trembling. Lie. Raise your face. There was gentleness in his cold voice. Vera didn't move. She knew men very well. She had to make them itch unbearably to raise her own value. Sure enough, Sean couldn't resist and reached out to lift her small face. It was as small as a palm, even more petite and delicate than mine. Damn playboy. He must be attracted. My spirit frantically got in between the two of them, but it was just my wishful thinking. Their hands and faces were pressed tightly together, as if glued. Sean didn't hesitate to kiss her. Sean, how dare you? I shouted angrily. Just a millimeter away. He actually stopped. I tentatively cursed his ancestors for 18 generations. Sean stroked his head. His brows furrowed unpleasantly, and his hand holding the wine glass tightened, and the glass shattered with a clang. Tonight's plan to pick up girls was ruined. The first thing Sean did when he got home was to take medicine. In the 2 years we were together, he had been taking his medicine obediently and his symptoms had been under control. But it seemed that he had stopped in recent days. He probably thought that the voice he had just heard was an illusion. After taking the medicine, he went to take a cold shower. I gentlemanly waited at the door for a while, and then gentlemanly slipped into the shower room. It's not like we haven't seen each other naked before. Sean wouldn't mind. Just as I was thinking this, Sean sneezed several times in a row in the mist-filled room. His eyes searched in the fog. No way. I didn't speak. What was he looking at? Why was he looking at me? Help. He was the one shirtless. Why was I the one who was embarrassed? Sean shook his head and muttered to himself. It's all an illusion. Tong Tong is a very decent girl. I'm really dirty. He turned off the faucet, put on his bathrobe and reminded himself several times in front of the mirror. Sean, don't think about Tong Tong like this. Definitely. Don't. But what could I do? I really wanted to hug Sean's waist. I really wanted to touch Sean's abdominal muscles. I really wanted to kiss Sean's small mouth. And enough. Stop thinking randomly. Tong Tong will be angry. Sean's scolding voice, along with the sound of the mirror breaking, interrupted my thoughts. Countless fragments reflected Sean's red pupils. I mean, what on earth was he thinking just now? To numb his nerves, Sean sat on the bed and drank vodka one cup after another. After being with me, he had given up drinking. He wouldn't touch anything that might cause him to lose control. I felt sorry for him, and couldn't help but try to snatch the cup. Even though I knew I would miss. The cup didn't move at all. But the tears in Sean's eyes burst like a dam. Tong Tong, I miss you. Sean was drunk and had a drunken fit all night. He called Tong Tong, to the pillow, to the window glass. And most outrageously, after vomiting, he called Tong, to the toilet lid. I followed him from the head of the bed to the windowsill, and then sat on the toilet lid, looking at him in a daze. Sean, am I that special? He raised his dazed eyes, looking like a helpless child. It's sweet and fragrant. I pointed at the toilet and then at myself, looking disgusted. Sean, are you sure? He nodded very seriously. Sean, believe it or not, I'll hit you. But halfway through hitting, I froze. How could he answer me so smoothly? I suddenly got excited. Sean, can you hear me talking? Sean ignored me and staggered back to the bed. 2 lines of hot tears flowed from his eyes and wet his ears. It's just an auditory hallucination. His voice was slightly trembling. Why can't it be a visual hallucination? Why not? Goodness. He was not satisfied with being a radio, but also wanted to upgrade to a TV. Sean fell asleep, still murmuring radio, TV, in his dream. I sat beside him and thought it was funny. But halfway through laughing, I remembered how miserably I had died. Alas, it was better to be a radio. What was so good about being a TV? If Sean could see me, it would be no different from watching a horror movie. After all, when the police found me, I was already a mess of flesh. The kind that couldn't be pieced together no matter how hard they tried. Sean, who had such a strong mental state, actually collapsed on the spot. He was helped up by his assistant several times. He didn't believe that that mangled thing was me. No. Impossible. We met yesterday. He grabbed his assistant's collar as if grabbing his last lifeline. He can testify. I proposed to her just yesterday. But no matter how much he denied it, he couldn't deny that the severed hand was wearing the engagement ring he had given me. My face could be destroyed, but he was most familiar with every detail of my body. I had never seen Sean like that. He howled hoarsely for a long time but couldn't utter a single word. His trembling hand tentatively touched me, like the first time he held my hand, when our fingertips touched. This time he didn't shy away like being electrocuted but stopped there for a long time, trying to pass a little warmth to my cold body. Actually, I hoped that Sean would believe that it wasn't me. At least in that way. In his mind, I would always be beautiful. When he was old and gray-haired, when he remembered me, maybe he would still smile. For me, since I was already dead, how I died really didn't matter at all. But for Sean, it was different. How could he accept me dying in such a state? It would become a nightmare for the rest of his life. The next day when Sean got up, I also became energetic. I hooked my arm around Sean's neck and swung like on a swing. My eyes kept looking into his collar, hissing. Sean, who was halfway through brushing his teeth, twitched the corner of his mouth and cursed in a low voice. Damn it. Suddenly, I thought it was extremely interesting to be able to tease him like this even after death. Sean, it's really me. I'm Stella. Not your illusion. He ignored me again, and went to the room to swallow a handful of pills. Still don't believe it? Then I'll tell him some little secrets that can't be told. Actually, I cut the hole in your pants pocket. It was so convenient and fun to tease him like this. And I could also see him blush. If you don't believe me, look at the white one in the wardrobe. There is also a hole in the right pocket. Sean didn't believe it, but still went to touch it suspiciously. His dejected expression suddenly became lively. Damn. Stella. Is it really you? You're really sneaky. Although he was complaining, the upward curve of his mouth couldn't be hidden, and the corners of his eyes gradually turned red. Sean, I saw you crying. I leaned forward and tried to use an upbeat tone to ease the atmosphere. Yesterday you even hugged the toilet lid. Cheesing and hugging it. So embarrassing. And you. Didn't you give up drinking? You lied to me. The medicine is not taken properly either. Sean lowered his head and didn't say a word for a long time. A crystal droplet fell on the floor. Tong tong. Was it very painful? All the prepared taunts stuck in my throat. And my memory was dragged back to that terrifying rainy night. If it hadn't been for that accident, that would have been the happiest day in my gloomy life. Sean proposed to me. Just like a dream. It was like in a relationship full of bickering. Suddenly someone said seriously, I love you. Although I appeared so calm in front of him, when I got home, I was extremely happy. I excitedly threw myself onto the bed without even turning on the light, not noticing at all that there was a person hidden in the darkness. The man with rough hand and scarred hands pressed me firmly under him. He pushed a syringe all the way in and dragged me into the bathroom before my consciousness completely disappeared. The sharp knife pierced my chest, and the excruciating pain tore my consciousness apart, completely shattering it, until my beating heart was removed from my body. My lips were still slightly twitching. The tweezers and surgical knives magnified infinitely were reflected in my pupils. And the world sank into complete darkness with only the sound of heavy breathing. Until finally, even the pain and the sound of gasping disappeared completely. I took a deep breath and laughed at him. Ghosts don't have pain-sensing nerves. What are you thinking? Now I don't have back pain or leg pain anymore. I'm as light as a swallow and can float wherever I want. Don't mention how happy I am. Sean didn't answer. He just looked up at me, his eyes passing through me and landing in the void. Tong Tong. Don't lie to me. I can feel it. Sean wanted to avenge me and asked me if I had any impression of the murderer. I shook my head. I can't remember a thing. Really? He stared suspiciously at the eyes of the strawberry bear. Since Sean discovered that he could talk to me, he had been forcing and seducing me in various ways to possess this ugly and fat bear. He said it was to give me the body of every girl's dream bear. I nodded the bear's head without hesitation. A slap landed on the bulging bear's butt. Liar. You clearly remembered that he was wearing a black baseball cap and there was a scar on his palm. Damn it. I forgot that he could hear my inner thoughts. I jumped 3 feet away with the bear's body. Sean crouched down, picked me up from the ground, and sighed deeply. Tong Tong. I'm not afraid of danger. But I am. I know the power behind it may be very great. So great that even someone with Sean's background can't find any clues. I will never forget the day my body was cremated. Sean held my urn and walked in the rain for a long time. He said, Tong Tong. I can't find the person who killed you. What should I do? I can't find it. The pale rain curtain blurred a bit, washing away one person's desolation and 2 people's helplessness. That day, I made up my mind not to look for the murderer anymore, but to spend the remaining days in the mortal world with Sean. Sean, can you stop looking? I detached myself from the bear, crouched down, and looked into his eyes. My tone was almost pleading. Promise me. Stop looking. Okay? Sean tightly hugged the strawberry bear to his chest, his eyes scarlet and terrifying. 2 words squeezed out between his teeth. No. Because of this, Sean and I had a quarrel. To annoy me, he went to pick up girls again. Vera had known that Sean would come and bumped into him right at the entrance of the private room. Sorry. The wine spilled all over Sean, and Vera was so worried that she reached out to wipe it. Sean, who had drunk some wine, grabbed her hand and stared fixedly at her evasive eyes. It's you? The warm breath blew on Vera's ear, making her blush instantly. Sean lifted her face and rubbed his fingertips along her clear jawline. Have you been waiting for me here for a long time? Vera, whose thoughts had been seen through, turned her face away and pretended to be calm. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, are you willing to come home with me? Sean let go of her hand and looked at the woman in front of him playfully. I quite like your type. Whether it was out of panic or on purpose. Vera's chest heaved violently, making the fair skin on her chest look even more attractive. Sean withdrew his gaze, put his hands in his pockets, and gave a light laugh. If you're willing, follow me. If not, forget it. Sean turned around and left without any hesitation, fully portraying the image of a playboy. Vera only hesitated for 2 seconds before trotting to follow. Her purpose of coming here is to climb up to the Sue family. Now that the opportunity was right in front of her, how could she not seize it? Vera naturally hooked her arm around Sean's. Sean just looked at her once, and a smug smile curled up at the corner of his mouth. Childish. I couldn't think of a more appropriate description for Sean's behavior. He raised his eyebrows and deliberately put his arm around Vera's waist. Extremely childish. Sean neither agreed nor disagreed, humming a little tune with a self-satisfied look on his face. Is Sean very happy? Vera turned her head to look at him. Sean looked the most handsome from this angle. Every time I looked at him like this, my heart would skip a beat. Sean's expression froze, and he replied coldly, Not really. I rolled my eyes silently. Oh, men. Men's attempts to be cool are often at the cost of their lives. The sports car sped along the road, and Vera and I both turned pale. Sean, can you drive more slowly? It's very dangerous. As soon as I finished speaking, Sean made a sharp turn, which made Vera scream in fright. Afraid? Vera thought he was talking to her and immediately restrained her frightened expression. It's okay. The joints of her fingers tightly gripping the handrail on the roof turned white, and her lips were trembling unconsciously. Whatever. Sean slammed his foot on the accelerator, his eyes looking as if he was risking his life. But I soon realized something was wrong. He was having an episode. I immediately lost the mood to play with him. Sean, I won't play with you anymore. Slow down. Another sharp turn almost made my blood and tears spurt out, and I directly hugged his neck. Sean, I'm scared. The accelerator loosened, and the speeding car finally slowed down. Sean's expression gradually calmed down. He parked the car by the roadside, and finally murmured in a trance and dull manner, "Don't be afraid." Vera's pretty face lost all color. It took her a long time to recover after Sean got out of the car. She pushed open the car door and vomited crazily. Sean was rarely gentle with other girls. He walked over and patted her on the back. Looking at the scene in front of me, it felt as if sand had gotten into my empty eyes, sour and swollen. But in my heart, I thought it was a good thing. Sean needed someone to accompany him to start anew. Even if that person was Vera, I would bless them. I had disliked Vera since I was a child. I always thought that her mother had taken my mother's husband away, and she had snatched my father. So when she later set her sights on Sean, I was like a vigilant kitten guarding its food, baring my teeth. But every time before I could extend my claws, Sean could sense that something was wrong with me and gently smoothed my ruffled fur. Vera had tried for a month, but Sean hadn't even noticed her existence. Only then did I realize that the person who cares about you won't bear to make you scheme. It turned out that it was never her mother or her who took everything away, but the man called father who chose to abandon. And I finally chose to let go and learned to reconcile with my past self. Are you jealous? Still in a daze, Sean had already walked up to me without my noticing, then quickly agreed to let me avenge you. And I'll stop right away. Sean put his hands in his pockets, looking as if he was seriously negotiating with me. It was really funny. Go ahead. Don't let the beauty wait too long in the car. Instinctively, I reached out to push him, but my hand passed through him, and I felt a great sense of loss. Sean didn't move. His nose was red. Tong Tong stopped easing me. Except for you. I don't like anyone else. I pursed my lips and readjusted my mood. Then you should cherish this one more. Look at how much she looks like me. Sean, if you miss this chance, there won't be another one. Sean gave a bitter laugh. Tong Tong, do you know what impressed me the most on the day you were cremated? I shook my head. I only remembered that it was a rainy day. The flames crackled continuously, and big raindrops pounded on the stained glass windows, making a harsh and dreary sound. It was that all your other parts had turned to ash. But your mouth was still stubborn. It scared me so much. Sean, go to hell. Even at this time, he still had the mood to joke with me. He was really something. Tong Tong, I know what you're thinking. Sean lit a cigarette, and a wisp of blue smoke curled up into a circle at his fingertips. He didn't smoke before because I didn't like it. If you really hope that I start anew, then you shouldn't pester me. This way, we both suffer. His voice was hoarse, and the smoke blurred his expression, making it impossible for me to tell his emotions. I froze on the spot. It was not until Sean finished smoking a cigarette and got up to leave that I fully understood the meaning of that sentence. Watching the car speeding away, I didn't follow it but turned around and left. Didn't I know that the best way to let go was to leave each other alone? But on the road to the underworld, looking at the blood-red spider lilies all over the mountains and fields, and remembering Sean's words, if I'd I, he will follow me, I could never feel at ease. Relying on the resentment of my tragic death, I managed to escape back to see him. I don't know when I will be taken back. Or if I stay too long, I will be scattered into ashes. But I just greedily want to see him one more time and stay with him a little longer. I always hold a glimmer of hope, thinking that he won't know. But whether alive or dead, he always seems to be able to see through all my thoughts at a glance. I drifted outside alone for a long time. And unconsciously, I still drifted back to Sean's house. Damn it. He must be tired of me. I kept kicking the small stones under my feet. Until finally, after repeated kicks, the small stone turned over. I took a deep breath and shamelessly slipped into the house quietly. As long as I don't speak and empty my thoughts, Sean will never know that I'm back to spy on him again. But there were no signs of people moving in the house. The room was empty, and the strawberry bear on the sofa was gone. Out having fun? But the shoes at the entrance were still there. Could it be that Sean was on guard against me long ago and deliberately hiding from me while having an affair? Probably to confirm my guess. Faint screams of a woman came from the depths of the room. But it didn't sound like a coquette's moan. Rather, it was the kind of scream that came from the fear of death. I had never known that there was a hidden basement in Sean's house. The screams came from there. The strong smell of alcohol, mixed with a faint smell of blood, made my nerves tense up all of a sudden. I didn't care about taking a detour anymore and directly passed through the wall. The empty room was only furnished with the simplest items, 2 chairs and a table. On the table was a tray, which contained all kinds of precision equipment that could only be seen in a hospital operating room. The strawberry bear was placed on the side chair, its wide-eyed stare seeming to be fixed on Vera on the other chair. Vera's face was as white as a sheet, her face smeared with sticky blood stains, no longer looking human. The most terrifying were her eyes. They were empty and reflected no light. And the blood was flowing out from there. I was so frightened by the scene that I couldn't say a word. It was as if the moment when I first saw my own dead body in the river. My blood froze and turned cold. So this was the purpose of his deliberately getting rid of me. Sean, are you crazy? I rushed to hit him, but missed again and again. It was like the overwhelming helplessness and the fear that reached the bottom of my heart were drowning me. Hurry up and call an ambulance. Sean stood motionless, coldly looking at the blood-stained cotton balls scattered all over the floor. Vera has nothing to do with my death. Sean, I'm begging you. I wasn't pleading for Vera. I just couldn't bear to see Sean degenerate because of me. The wound will heal sooner or later. But if you make a huge mistake, there will really be no chance to make up for it. Sean tightened his right hand holding the glass bottle, walked over, picked up the strawberry bear, and turned around to leave. Only Vera, who was chained to the chair, was still begging feebly, "No. It wasn't me. I just took her eyes. Just took her eyes." My heart skipped a beat. I turned my head and looked at Vera in disbelief. What did she mean? What did she mean by taking my eyes? She was fine. Why did she take my eyes? When I was 17, my mother died. My father couldn't wait to bring his mistress and illegitimate daughter home. I was so angry that I went to argue with him, and was slapped hard. Stay if you like. Or leave if you don't. Then I left. Dropped out of school and started working. In those years, in order to survive, I did all kinds of dirty and tiring jobs. If I hadn't met Sean later, I might never have climbed out of that quagmire in my life. Later, my father came to me only once, begging me to save Vera. She had a car accident and urgently needed a blood transfusion. Both she and I had the rare B and O blood type. I went that time. At that time, I only glanced at Vera in the ward. I didn't know that she had actually injured her eyes and would be blind for the rest of her life without a cornea transplant. But I never expected that they would be so audacious as to reach out to a living person. Even a relative. The sky had already darkened. Cigarette butts were scattered all over the ground at Sean's feet, until the last bit of scarlet was extinguished. Sean picked up the strawberry bear and stood up. Tong Tong, come here. I squeezed my body into the bear. The bear's belly was bulging as if something more had been stuffed in. Sean bent down and kissed me. I'm sorry. He stroked my bare back. And his tears soaked the furry ears. Tong tong. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. His handsome face was marked with a vicissitude that didn't belong to his age. It was as if these days had been as long as a century for him. Sean held me and carried a tinkling black backpack on his back. Before going out, he rubbed the bear's head. And his tone was as gentle as if he was comforting a frightened child. Don't worry. I've already called 120. I will only take back what originally belonged to you. I don't care about her life. Sean. Can we not go? I didn't know what he had learned from Vera. But his state was very wrong. I was very worried. I couldn't bear to watch him gradually destroy his future. Sean. I can't. Tong tong. I will only take back what belongs to you. I won't do anything else. But some things, once taken away, mean death itself. Sean found that place with ease. It was a high-end sanatorium hidden in the mountains. Along the way, I hoped that someone would stop him. After all, his appearance was out of place in this quiet sanatorium. But no one did. Even most of the people who saw him would respectfully call him Sean. On the brochure of the sanatorium, there was a middle-aged man named Edward who looked like Sean. Suddenly, someone called Sean from behind. At the moment of turning around, I heard a familiar sound. Thump. Thump one after another. He looked so much like Sean. Sean should look like this when he reached that age. But even though he always had a gentle smile, it made people instinctively feel cold. Sean held me tighter. I could feel his little finger trembling slightly. Sean, you're here. Edward was not surprised at his arrival. Walk with Dad? Sean's expression. Leslie took the wheelchair from the nurse and walked step by step towards the deeper corridor. Open it and have a look. It's a gift for you. Edward handed a beautifully packaged gift box to Sean. Inside were a few photos and an agreement. In the photos, a man wearing a black baseball cap was lying in a pit. Already lifeless. There was a long scar on his hand. And when he took off his mask, his face was clearly Sean's assistant. You sent him. Sean crumpled the photos into a ball and stated it in an affirmative tone. Edward didn't refute. I've seen the photo of that girl. She's very beautiful. But she's not suitable for you. Edward took out the share transfer agreement and handed it to Sean. Sean didn't take it. So you killed her? His voice was hoarse and low. And he pressed the up elevator button. Edward playfully twirled the thumb ring in his hand. There were originally other matching candidates. Edward placed his palm over his heart, feeling the beating there, with an expression of enjoyment. It was the one in your basement. Edward seemed to know everything. He even arranged for someone to deal with Vera immediately after Sean left. You can play as you like usually. But marriage can't be based on just passionate love. You young people always don't know what is suitable, and what is the best. I just helped you avoid that not-so-good option. His tone was as calm as if he had just crossed out an option in a list. Not pronouncing my death. The elevator door opened just in time. And Sean pushed him out. The weather forecast said there would be heavy rain today. The wind on the rooftop was already very strong. Sean crouched down and straightened the blanket wrinkled by the wind for him. You and my mother were so suitable. But why weren't you happy? Edward laughed. Son. Who said that being suitable means being happy? You are like me in everything. But this point of being too serious about relationships is not good. Sean didn't respond. He stood up straight and blocked the light in front. You're so pitiful. You always think you can control everything self-righteously. But you never understand that people's feelings are often involuntary. Right. After all, you've never experienced it. Sean opened his backpack and picked out some handy tools from it. In the light and shadow, Edward looked at him with an expression as if he was admiring a work of art in a strange way. But when he saw that Sean took out a tablet, a trace of dissatisfaction flashed across the man's face. Sean unlocked it unhurriedly and clicked on a video in the photo album. Judging from the angle, it seemed to be filmed while hiding in the closet. Edward was pulling a woman's hair and stabbing her crazily. The woman's desperate eyes looked in the direction of the camera, and she made a choosing gesture with great difficulty. The wind blew fiercely. Edward sat in the wheelchair and calmly admitted, "Yes, I killed your mother. She shouldn't have thought of taking you away. You are my son and should be like me." Sean turned off the video and clicked on another one. It was filmed on the day he proposed. "This is my girlfriend. Her name is Tong Tong. She's only years old this year. I love her very much. We've been together for 2 years. But the time I've liked her is much longer than that. We could have been very happy." Edward was getting impatient. "Enough. I don't want to hear about love." Sean sneered. "Okay. Then let's talk about something you're interested in. Before I came, I had already sent the video just now to my uncle. He has been looking for the truth about my mother's disappearance. You know that." Finally, there was a change in Edward's expression. "Sean, don't forget that you are surnamed Sue. You and the Sue family will either thrive together or perish together." Sean nodded, picked up the agreement, and tore it into pieces. "You're right. Knowing that the Sue family is about to be ruined, I sold all my shares. I also casually exposed some family scandals. It should be topping the hot search list by now." Edward's eyes widened. He stood up from the wheelchair and grabbed Sean's arm. "Why?" Sean pushed him back and quickly injected a muscle relaxant. "Because you destroyed the most important thing to me. So, I will also destroy everything you've carefully cultivated. You've spent your whole life trying to turn me into a heartless machine like you. But I'm not you and will never be." A loud thunderclap rang out, and the rolling rain clouds in the distance were approaching continuously. Sean hung the injection containing the stop-beating solution on the side of the wheelchair and inserted the infusion needle into Edward's forearm. At this moment, the man in the wheelchair was terrifyingly calm, and there was even a smug smile on the corner of his mouth. It was as if, apart from the little incident just now, all of Sean's actions were within his plan. "You should use a knife. It would be faster." Sean didn't speak. He just took out a small bucket of transparent liquid from his backpack and poured it on himself and the strawberry bear. The pungent smell of gasoline made me realize that something was wrong. Edward's smile gradually disappeared. "What are you going to do?" Sean looked at him and lit a match. "I said I would destroy everything you've carefully cultivated, including myself." In Edward's wide-eyed rage, he didn't hesitate to let go of his finger. "I used all my strength to blow out that small flame at the last moment." "Sean, don't. Please." But he took out another one and lit it with a sizzle. "Tong Tong. You don't want me to live the rest of my life as a murderer or the son of a murderer, right?" Sean really didn't leave himself any way out. "Let me be with you." The fire flared up. Almost at the same time, a drop of rain finally fell from the sky. Then 2 drops. 3 drops. And it poured down. In the rain curtain, Sean jumped, like a moth flying into the fire, his wings gradually being burned away. In the sky, from the burned-out belly of the strawberry bear, pieces of burned paper floated out. With the wind and the rain, it turned into a low murmur of "I love you." And I finally received those love letters that spanned time and space. Sean's side story before meeting Stella. "My world had always been gray. My father, who had an emotional disorder, had been committed to turning me into a cold-blooded person like him. He firmly believed that emotions would be a person's greatest weakness, making people irrational and leading them into despair. Just like my mother, who disappeared after having an affair. That day, my mother originally wanted to take me away with her. But my father came home early. She pushed me into the closet and told me to be absolutely quiet no matter what happened. I saw my father take a knife and stab it into her abdomen. Again and again. My mother once said that there would be a little brother in there. But that little brother, along with my mother, turned into a pool of blood. I watched all this, with a fire burning in my heart, but an extremely calm face. compared to my wailing when my father asked me to kill rabbits and break the necks of little birds before. I think that was the moment when I was most like my father in my life. It was a pity that he didn't see it. Otherwise, he would have been extremely gratified. After my mother disappeared, my father's control over me became even more severe. When he was at home, I couldn't cry or laugh. The extreme numbness and depression in life finally made me fall ill. When the doctor diagnosed me with mania, my father's face looked extremely ugly. In his opinion, I, who couldn't control my emotions, was no different from a ruined work. However, this was a good thing for me. He no longer restricted my life so much. He even threw a large sum of money at me and let me fend for myself. I moved out and began a not-so-normal life. I heard that people at my age were all in high school. I thought it was interesting. So I also found an ordinary school to study in. I think this was the most correct choice I had ever made in my life because I met Stella here. A very interesting girl. What she liked and didn't like was written all over her face. She lived sincerely and passionately. In her, I saw everything that had been taken away from me. I began to can't help but secretly observe her. Can't help but secretly tease her. And can't help but quietly fall in love with her. But I never knew how to handle a relationship. Maybe what I was more afraid of was coldness and rejection. So I deliberately spread the rumor that she liked me to test her. But I didn't expect that this silly girl, in order to break the situation, randomly found a boy and wrote a love letter. I admit that I was jealous. I deliberately snatched it over and went to tease her. The love letter was torn, and Tong Tong cried very sadly. I also felt very sad in my heart. I wrote 10 love letters overnight and stuffed them into her favorite strawberry bear doll, planning to confess my love to her the next day. I hoped that she could forgive me and also hoped that she could accept me. But Tong Tong didn't come to school the next day. Nor did she come on the third or fourth day. Tong Tong dropped out of school. I waited outside her house for several days. But all I got was the new residents who had just moved in. That strawberry bear and the love letters were left on my bedside like that. Until later, I actually met her. Drunk out of her mind. I had a fight with her boss who was holding her with ill intentions. Drunk Tong Tong was terrifyingly strong. And her eyes looking at me were dazed. For a moment, I even thought that she had recognized me. And then she pushed me hard onto the bed. She said, "Sean, actually, I do like you." With my own little thoughts in my heart, I let her kiss me and lost my sanity with her. Those days with Tong Tong were the happiest and most joyful time in my life. But all the beauty turned into a bubble at the most splendid moment. The moment I saw Tong Tong's body. It was as if God was saying, "Sean, it's time to wake up from the dream. You are the devil's child. You don't deserve happiness." The forensic doctor said that the amount of anesthesia in Tong Tong's body was very small. That means, when the murderer took out her heart and eyes, she was conscious. She was such a person who was so afraid of pain. Why was it so cruel? My heart ached so much that it almost shattered into countless pieces. I swore that I would avenge her. But the murderer didn't leave any clues. I could only check one by one the medical institutions that might be involved in illegal trading. It was at this time that that woman who looked a bit like Tong Tong appeared again. At such a time, she deliberately, accidentally, met me. I wouldn't let go of any possibility and checked everything about Vera. I learned that she had a car accident a year ago and was blind in both eyes. But now she had recovered as before. I knew that she deliberately approached me. So I deliberately spread the word that I was interested in Tong Tong. Sure enough, she did the same thing. Just when I planned to take her back that night to find out everything, I heard Tong Tong's voice. At first, I thought it was an illusion caused by not taking my medicine. But until she told me a little secret that even I didn't know. At that moment of regaining what was lost, I just wanted to hold her and cry out loud. But I didn't want her to worry about me. I tried hard to pretend to be relaxed and calm, but still couldn't help but shed tears. Tong Tong didn't want me to avenge her. I knew that she was worried about me. But I would never let go of the person who had hurt her. So I deliberately said some harsh words. Sent her away. And tied Vera to the basement. Sure enough. She knew a lot. But when she said my father's name, I still couldn't help but tremble all over. Vera said that Edward needed a heart transplant. She was a match in terms of type. Edward offered a very high price. But Vera didn't want to die. She first thought of Tong Tong. They had the same blood type. If she could be a match, Tong Tong probably could too. And after learning that Tong Tong was my girlfriend, Edward didn't hesitate to let Vera go and even actively provided her with a cornea. At this moment, despair completely drowned me. Only then did I know that it was I who had harmed Tong Tong. I had always thought that Edward's control over me had ended long ago. After leaving home, he formed a new family. But he never had any more children and soon divorced. I didn't expect that I had always been in his hands. Even my assistant was the person he sent to monitor me. After all, it was I who had harmed Tong Tong. If she hadn't been with me, that man wouldn't have targeted her. Edward had destroyed everything of mine, so I would also make him pay the same price. I will destroy whatever he cares about. Even if it's myself. It doesn't matter. On the rooftop, Tong Tong blew out the match in my hand. I knew that she couldn't bear to see me give up everything for her. But she didn't know that she had already become my only one. So I cut off all my retreats just to embark on a journey back to her. Tong Tong, only wish that in the next life, we can both be happy.